Okay, today we're going to classify quadrilaterals as parallelograms, general quadrilaterals, squares, rectangles. All right, so the first thing, just like triangles, we need to find their slope and their distance. So I've already set up the first one. IJ, JK, KL, and IL. I found the slopes of each by subtracting. I did 9 minus 3 is 6, and 3 minus -5 is 8. I got 6/8. I did the square roots for the distance formula, or this x squared plus y squared equals that, or a squared plus b squared equals 10. Then I did the same thing for jk. I did 3 minus -5, which is 8, and -5 minus 1, which is -6. Then I did -5 minus 1, and I got -6, and 1 minus 9, and I got -8. And finally, I did 9 minus 1 is 8, and 3 minus 9 is -6. Every time I noticed it was 6/8, 8/6, 6/8, 8/6. And so I noticed they all had to be 10. That tells me right there it either has to be a rhombus or a square. The difference between a rhombus and a square is they don't have perpendicular lines or parallel lines. So I then checked, okay, how did the slopes compare? I noticed that these two were perpendicular and these two were perpendicular. And that's important because it goes in order. And then I noticed the opposite sides are parallel. So IJ was perpendicular to JK, and KL was perpendicular to IL. IJ was perpendicular to KL. This should have been parallel, sorry. Parallel. And JK was parallel to IL. So if I have perpendicular and parallel, then I know it's a square. Let's look at the second one, number 4. Okay, so again, I've already set up the distance formulas here. I know I'm doing -1, so I'm starting with mn. I'm doing 1 minus -2, which gives me 3, over -3 minus -7, which is 4. If I do the distance formula, that's 3 squared plus 4 squared. That's 9 and 16. On my calculator, that would be the square root of 25, which is 5. Going to the next one, I have -2 minus -10. That's really 8. I have -7 minus -1. That's really -6. So now I have 8 squared plus -6 squared. I don't even worry about the negatives because I know I'm squaring. It'll be positive. That'll get me 100, which equals 10. I go to OP. When I did OP, I did -10 minus -7. That makes -3. I did -1 minus 3. That makes -4. I'm going to change both of those to positives. So 3 squared plus 4 squared, similar to the one up here, equals 5. And finally, MP. I did 1 minus -7, which is 8, and -3 minus 3, which is -6, similar to NO. 8 squared plus 6 squared, that equals 10. Okay, so what do I already know? I know that the opposite two sides are equal. So therefore, I know it's not a square, and I know it's not a rhombus. So I know two sets of sides congruent. So it could be a rectangle, it could be just a parallelogram. So the next thing I want to do is see if anything are parallel. Well, 3/4, and let's see if these are perpendicular. Well, yep. MN is perpendicular to NO, negative reciprocals. And same thing here. OP is perpendicular to MP. So two sets of sides are congruent and parallel. See, 3/4, 3/4, 4/3, 4/3. So if I know they're perpendicular and parallel, I therefore know that this is a rectangle. So to be a rectangle, we have to prove parallel, perpendicular, and two sets equal. All right, the last one. When we look at the last one, I did same thing. I set it up. I just rewrote it. 5 minus 2 is 3. 5 minus 1 is 4, 3/4. 3 squared plus 4 squared. That equals 5 when we do all the work. Next one, I did 2 minus -1. that's 3. And 1 minus 13, that's negative 12. So 3 squared plus negative 12 squared, or you can even just do the 12, is 144 and 9, which is 153. Then the next one is 1, negative 1 minus 4, and that gets me negative 5. And 13 minus 9 is 4. So I have 5 squared and 4 squared. That's 25 and 16. That will be the square root of 41. And finally, my last one, 5. I did 5 minus 4 is 1, and 5 minus 9 is negative 4. And I get 1 squared plus 4 squared, and that gets me the square root of 17. Here's what I realized. None of them are the same. So it can't be any kind of parallelogram or a trapezoid, because trapezoids have 2 sides the same. So therefore, I know this one is, well, it could be a trapezoid if you're not an equilateral trapezoid. I need to go check my slopes and see if any of them are congruent. So here's what I have. I have 3/4. Ooh, 3/12. That's the same thing as negative 1/4. These two are parallel. So RS is parallel to QT. This is going to be a trapezoid that looks similar to that. None of the sides are equal, but it does have one set of parallel sides. So remember, a parallel, you just do the little angle like that. So you have one set of parallel sides, and that tells me trapezoid. No sets parallel, just a regular parallelogram. 2 sets parallel, well, that could be a lot of things: square, rectangle, parallelogram. 1 set parallel is a trapezoid. Okay, now it's your turn. Last 2 for you.